Hey YouTube, today we'll be looking at all the updates Procreate Dreams has received since launch, and then we'll be looking at how I use those tools to create the animation on the screen. So first, if we open up a document, we can see that there are changes to the timeline. If we go to Draw in Paint mode, when we make new frames, onion skin will automatically be enabled when we open a document. We can also see that all of our drawings will have a duration of 1 frame now. We can now use the new fill duration option when we hold a frame, and it will fill all the empty space between 2 frames or the end of the track. This is very useful for editing the duration of your frames. We can also now choose custom frame rates. So if we go into our settings and then go to properties, we can go to frame per second, click custom, and then enter a number. Then if we go to our playback, we'll see that is now a different frame rate. Aside from that, we also now have pressure and smoothing options. If we hit pressure and smoothing in preferences, we can change our stabilization, motion filtering expression, and our pressure sensitivity. So we're going to start off by making some tests with all of these. First, here you can see with no stabilization, we draw and there are some loose ends. Now, if we turn on stabilization, our lines are much more easy to control, but it's a little hard to draw. I recommend putting your stabilization somewhere around 10 to 50% if you decide to use stabilization. But rather than using stabilization, I would recommend that you use motion filtering instead, as it seems to be an improved system of stabilization and they work very similar. So instead, we'll put on motion filtering and do a motion filtering test. As you can see with motion filtering, our lines become very straight and it becomes very hard to draw. It's also very hard to write, as you can see on the screen. That being said, motion filtering is very good for drawing straight lines. As you can see, when we try to draw straight lines, they come out very easily when we're using motion filtering at a high percentage. Just like stabilization, you can use motion filtering at a lower percentage and it won't make your lines as straight and hard to control for regular drawing purposes. Although motion filtering makes our line very straight, we can change this by putting on motion filtering expression. Motion filtering expression basically just brings the character back to your line. So rather than making your line very straight when you draw, it will try to interpret how you originally drew your line, and you'll be able to do much more curves when you're drawing. As we can see here, when I put on motion filtering expression, I can draw and write in a more natural manner. And then also, I still get all the benefits of motion filtering where I can make straight lines pretty easily. It's important to note that motion filtering expression will not work without motion filtering on. Motion filtering expression also will not work well if your motion filtering is set to a very high percentage. It's best to keep your motion filtering low and your motion filtering expression high if you want to draw very natural lines but keep them very stable. Aside from this, we can also change our pressure sensitivity settings. If we use the curves on the pressure sensitivity settings, if we set it higher, we'll see that our lines can become much thicker during our strokes. We can also make several curves to play with our sensitivity curve. I recommend experimenting with this so you can find your desired pressure sensitivity setting. You can also click the pink points to reset or delete your points so you'll have something more close to the original pressure curve. Aside from this, we also have undo and redo buttons that we can put on in preferences. When we put it on, we see undo and redo buttons next to our time code on top of the timeline. We can just hit these buttons to undo or redo. We also can now turn off the 2-finger undo redo gesture by hitting undo and redo gesture in preferences. Also, if we change the speed for rapid undo delay, it will change the speed at which we can put in multiple undos by holding our 2 fingers on the screen If you set it to 0.9 seconds, it will obviously take more time than 0.6 seconds. Finally, we have new drawing layer options. We now can drag and drop our layers to change the layer hierarchy, so we can put one layer on top of another. Aside from this, we can also make groups. We can select several layers by sliding to the left on a layer and then hitting group. We also now have clipping masks. Clipping mask will make your drawing on a layer be contained in the layer under it. So then we would only be able to paint inside the layer under the clipping mask layer. Last but not least, we have masks. When you click a layer, you can hit mask and it'll create a layer mask. Layer mask will basically erase your drawing when you draw with a black color, but it doesn't actually erase it, just makes it transparent, as you can see when you hide your layer mask. If you draw with white, it will make your drawing come back and it will no longer be transparent. This is good to use when you have two overlapping objects in an animation. I forgot to mention this earlier in the recording, but we can also now double tap on the flat side of our Apple Pencil towards the tip, and we'll be able to change from the drawing tool to the erase tool. Now that we're done learning all the new features, I'm going to cut the audio and show how I made the animation with these tools. If you enjoyed or learned something, please hit a like and subscribe, and drop a comment if you have any questions. Thank you.